Hi Daniel. I'm back with a video of two of our game, one of our games in the game that you played in the German competition, I believe. Um, I'm a bit late with my reply, but I hope that you had maybe you enjoyed a little bit of rest without chess. The good thing is that by now my school gave me a professional Zoom account so that I won't be limited by the 40-minute rule. So first of all, I propose to look at a Scandinavian game. I might put on the computer at a few on a few occasions, but I also have an engine on my PC, so I can check this if necessary. So I think that you played the opening very well. There are maybe more precise moves, I don't know. For example, computer likes the thing with a quick knight d5, but I don't think I have much to say right here. Now, maybe the first note at this point is that that you exchange at once, which is very fine. But sometimes it's not necessary to exchange that much or that early because, well, okay, sometimes the bishop can go to h5 and then black can play g5. And this way you can avoid that white will exchange the bishop like this. On other occasions, the bishop cannot run away and then you can wait with exchanging this bishop. A bit of a downside of such a quick exchange is that you open the H file while the rook is still on it, and this might give a black a motive to play for. But okay, it's all I think quite logical and good enough for a very small plus for white. And I think that maybe this is the first critical moment. I must say so. Generally speaking, white is certainly not worse, to say the least. He has the bishop pair, and he has the better pawn structure. And this should be enough for a small plus. Now, how are you going to progress, or what must you avoid? I think it's important to deal with moves, liberating moves by black. So liberating moves are pawn moves that are that will deconstruct your pawn structure. Now, the pawn on d4 is very important for you. It secures a lot of space, and it's important, I think, to avoid a move like c5 or e5. I don't think that black can so easily play one of these moves, because if you play c5, you open up b5 for the white pieces. If you play e5, you open up the c4, f7 diagonal. So black's pawn position is a bit static, so I don't think he can play that much with his pawns. And he will simplify one way or another, try to simplify at least, and then get into an endgame and hold it maybe. White has the bishop pair, and he has some mobility in the pawn structure, namely he can aim for c4 and d5 at a certain point. And this would open up the position, of course, and this would be very beneficial for the bishops. For example, if everything gets exchanged on d5, in the end there will be a bishop on d5, which will attack f7 and b7. So that's an idea. Now you played a4, and this to me seems a bit rash because a move like a4 doesn't fit very well with a move like c4, because you really abandon the b4 square. The a4 move is an idea that you can have. For example, you can follow up with a5 and a6. Then this pawn has to move, and in the end, this diagonal and notably the c pawn will become a bit weaker. So there is a point, but I think, and yeah, if you play with black, it's always a question, what are you going to do to deal with this pawn? Are you going to allow it to advance? Are you going to stop it with a6? Are you going to stop it with a5 or something else? Now, I made a very strange decision, I must say. I just let you advance even with tempo. So a6, of course, um, would result in some black squares which are weak, and in the end, b7 might also become weak. a5 is a bit the same problem. This pawn can become weak. You also weaken these squares a little bit, but it seems less of a problem for me, because suppose that if you play a6 with black, a5, then you have knight a4, knight b6 at some point. If you play a5, then this knight is not so cannot really advance on the queen side. But of course, by playing a5, you give white some ID. For example, knight a2, king b1, knight c1, knight b3, and you make a5 a target. Now the move that I also so a5 is the first that I saw when I analyzed this game to stop it, but I also realized that it's a weakening move. But immediately after this, I noticed bishop b4, which is very effective in stopping the a pawn, which is also dealing with the bishop pair. As yeah, all of white's plans seem a bit blocked by this. If you move the knight, black will exchange the bishops, and there's no longer a bishop pair, of course. If you don't move the knight, there will be this spin, which will be annoying, because if white's bishop will one day go to, for example, to f4 or something, then you can exchange at c3 and weaken white's pawn structure. Now, I did it worse, I think. So I gave you the option to advance, and also, yeah, you can see that black's problem is now that this bishop on f8 remains quite undeveloped. Black is not able to exchange pieces, and this is something he would like to do, of course, because he has less space than his opponent. Knight a2 is fine. You cover b4, a6, c4 is also fine. So now you have, I believe you have a note. No, the note is on move 14. So what you write here, opening up the position, is something which is important. Sorry. But you also write about the pawn majority on the queen side. I think this is a simple mistake, because you have the majority on the queen side, of course. So the thing that you want to do with white is to advance on the queen side, get some pawns exchanged, and in the end, with the white square bishop, you should be able to tackle b7 and a6, because these are already fixed on white, and it's very difficult for black to defend in the long run. Bishop f4 was played, castle h4, c5. So this is the counter blow, let's say. But of course, white still keeps control with his following move, which is a very good one, I think. And a bit downside of c5 for black is now that you have the queenside majority. Now it's really 3 against 2. So this really gives an idea. With the bishops, which are still dominant, and with the weakened black's pawn structure on the king side, this should be enough for some small plus. So I think in general you should keep the pieces, but I think that if you play bishop b3, bishop b7, it's not possible to avoid the exchange of rooks at some point. So it's fine to exchange it right away, I think. Bishop b6, g3. Okay, so now this is all fine. I think you should just develop step by step. You can do without g3. Well, maybe you can't. You want to move the rook, of course, so then g3 is very important. At this point, maybe this can be considered, but I didn't analyze it. Maybe bishop f3 just is enough. Defending the rook so that you must take probably. And I think that okay, you solved the problem. Black solved the problem of the double pawns, but the queenside majority remains, and the position is also opened up for the bishops a little bit. So this is all fine. Now e5 is a bit double-edged. I think it's okay because black also has to do something with the pawns, and by going with c5 a little bit earlier, where black gave white a queenside majority. In return, black got the kings the majority in the center. You have a pawn in the center, and you can make use of it by advancing it, which I do a little bit. The downside of a move like e5 is that you give away d5, and this becomes even stronger. Before all of this is logical, I think, and at this point. Yeah, it's very instructive. I think that computer suggests e4. I play again, as I usually do, too much on general principles, which is in this position I want to exchange pieces, hoping that it will be a draw. But I think that now my clustered pieces in the center can be exploited by it. The downside of a move like e4 is that the pawn is a bit advanced. It can be attacked, but you need quite a few moves for white to attack it. You need to move the bishop on g2 and then knight to c3, but then b4 is hanging. In the meantime, you can also play bishop e5, so you can take very good post with your bishop, and you can make use of d4. So you can see that black is getting active as well. So yeah, this should be done. Yeah, I think white has a small plus, but okay, it should not be too dramatic if black plays it well. Now I kind of abandon the central play that I had, and here I think that you do the same with bishop d2. So you give away d4, and you can see that black now really can make some active moves and create some play. And I fail to understand why bishop d2 is played. I think it's logical to centralize something like the king. Suppose that something like this happens, then this pawn will not live very long, of course. So I cannot imagine that this was something that attracted or that made you a little bit afraid. The computer says g5, but this is already quite a difficult move to see, I think. And apart from it, you are playing very logically with white. You are improving your pieces, improving the king in the endgame. King knight e4 is not dangerous at all, I think. And you can afterwards you can play knight c3, you can play bishop f3, and you can see that white really can make progress. Knight e5, and the king can join once that this knight is eliminated. So this seems very strange to me that you don't, well, that you play bishop d2 in the first place, because it's a backward move that you don't need to make, I think. Knight c3 seems also logical to me at first sight, but king d2 centralizing the king to d3 seems very fine for me. So bishop d2. So now I make I grab some space and I achieve a little bit my aim now, namely that I succeeded in fixing these pawns a little bit. This can be a bit a downside too, because b6 is of course no longer possible. But on the other hand, by having this pawn advanced, I have these squares that are opening up for my knights. So I was hoping to make use of it. And here again, I aim for simplification, but this is a very much misjudged. What I should see in this position, which is essential, is that with white, of course, you have this bishop, this very strong bishop. You might untangle at some point, but with which I mean that white's pieces, they are not as active as they could be, so you can chase them back a little bit with knight c3 is a very logical move to chase black back. But in the end, I think that white will have the problem that he cannot really do anything with his king. And in the endgame, again, this is very important. Now, once that I exchange this knight from e4, you can see that the king really has a path towards activity. And this gives, I believe that this gives black better chances than he should have. King e7. Yeah, okay, this is at some point in the game, I saw that I totally blundered, and I think it was this point because you can take and just pick up this pawn and then the other one, and it's finished. So I think the instructive thing. Well, I don't know what your thoughts were at this moment, but I think it's very important to check forced moves, and taking a piece is of course a very much a forced move. Your opponent has to take back, and if you check this just by principle, I think that you will very quickly find a move bishop f3, and subsequently you will win at once. Obviously, I also didn't check this forced move because I played this king e7 blunder. So we continue with this a little bit. Okay. Okay, so here king e4. It seems, yeah, I don't know if it's such a bad thing. Maybe it's a bit early to advance the king, I don't know, and improve the bishop first. It seems to me that bishop d5 is a very logical move in any case. So the thing that I would see at this point is that you can follow up with king c4, b5. He will take king b5, and you can see that black's queen side is really getting undermined a little bit. Again, you are making space by opening up a bit for the bishops. This seems a logical plan to me. Here the position is more closed, and okay, you don't improve your bishops. You don't do anything wrong, I think, because you still keep the structural advantage that you have. But okay, by improving the bishop, you can make more pressure, I think. As you are doing now, by the way, you are improving your pieces, but at a slightly slower rate. So here I had the hope of mating you very shortly at least. But okay, you can see you can't do anything wrong. Your king is now better, and you are also improving your bishop, I think, step by step. Bishop d2, knight f6. Okay, b5. Now this seems possible. You can maybe also check this move first to increase the pressure a little bit, but I don't know if it's very useful. So b5, knight e4, bishop e1, bishop e8. In this position, I would certainly have spotted bishop g2. Why? Because it's constantly in my mind with why to improve this bishop, because this is really the piece that will kill black in this game. You also have to keep b7 always as a target, because it's the softest point in the position. And right here, the situation is very promising, because bishop g2, the knight cannot move because you would just take. So I don't think that black can allow this one. So because he's almost in Zugzwang, because if you play b6, the bishop is closed in. So this seems a very good moment to do this. B takes a6 also loses several possibilities. You lose the b7 pawn as a weakness. You lose possibility like b6, closing in the bishop. You lose a possibility like c6, which can force some kind of breakthrough. Again, it's not dramatic, but I don't know in which measure you looked at the other options at the I think this is most important to question yourself. Yeah, did you check bishop g2? Did you see the other motives, b6, c6, and did you check them? I think this is interesting to know. So b takes a. So yeah, the problem a little bit is also, in my opinion, that, but I might be wrong, and it's is that it's not so easy to yeah, to get to this a6 pawn, because you lack a little bit central control. In chess, centralization is very important. So if you, for example, aim at a pawn at the edge of the board, like here, you tend to lose control over the center. And I played a very nice game with this. Maybe I should show it one day. If you are too much going to the edge of the board and you cannot force a decision, then it can bounce back in the center. And this is a bit tricky also, maybe. So bishop e2 is a bit slow. I think that king b4 suggests itself because you have a direct attack. And okay, he can try to keep it one way or another, and you can see that there are some holes in White's position. I mean that he has a weak, somewhat weak c pawn, and everything is defended. The king can join, but well, not completely because you can chase it away. So I think that this line should be calculated, and it's not too difficult to calculate this thing. I think king b4. Bishop e2 is too waiting. I think it's yeah, I don't see a plan with it, and it would be better if you could have an ID behind the move. And if you look for moves with an ID, I think that king b4 is very logical because you attack a weak pawn and you have bishop c4 also, which comes in the position. Now, in the end, it's more or less the same. King f6 is very bad because of the spin. Again, I don't know why I did it like this. But okay, there is a line. Black can hold just, but it's not sufficient, I think, and needs a lot of calculation. Bishop c3 is just easy to think of. It sets up a pin, and it makes it very difficult for black in any case. G5 was played. So what I tried to do, you can see right away the downside of not playing bishop c3. I think is that I'm able to simplify and to get rid of some weaknesses, notably this weak pawn. And I'm also simplifying. So one of my ideas is to exchange all the pawns on the king side, so that I can sacrifice a piece on the queen side to get a draw if necessary or if possible. But again, here I sin a bit against it. I should maybe have taken it. King d3. Let me check. Okay, so yeah, it felt already quite desperate. So I kind of played on, but with no good reason. You asked me when I knew what result would be possible or something like this, like when is white winning, when is white losing, because black has this trick with these passed pawns on two sides of the board, but I was quite convinced that white should be able to control it. But in the end, there were mistakes which even allowed black to win in a certain position. So yeah, I think it's a calculation matter, which is not so easy, but one should calculate this. In general, it's strong as to have passed pawns on both sides of the board, which is what I'm aiming for. So I know that this b pawn can be annoying. I know if I can create an f pawn as well, that it can be annoying. I will try to chase your king so that I can approach your c pawn and get into a draw. This was my idea, but I didn't calculate it that much. So mainly you should have calculated it, I think, because in my case it's kind of desperate play. But for white, it's of course very important to calculate it exactly. So it was very surprising because at one point, and yeah, at this point it is. No, it's not at this point. You can see that we, yeah, this is a move maybe that yeah, King d3 is of course a move that really gives me a tempo for nothing. You move away the king from the c pawn, which is hard to understand. You are maybe waiting for me to push one of these pawns, but it's completely obvious that that it's too soon for this. So bishop c3 seems very logical to me because yeah, you are improving your bishop. Ideally, it would be on d4 maybe, and you're getting closer to d4. So here we have this one. Yeah, now, okay, it is a draw apparently, but very tough one. And here it should be even winning for me, which is quite unbelievable. But the point was, so f3 is a blunder again, but this one is quite unbelievably winning because you are a piece up, but my king is just dominant, and I will get the winning pawn endgame, easily winning pawn endgame because I get the big T, I would say, which the big T is this one. So I get with my king on one of these squares, and this is always winning for me. So this is yeah, this endgame was not the best from both of us. It was desperacy in my case, and with white one should calculate. I think it's also important to try to to see to find a move that is useful. At some points, maybe you don't do it. So like bishop c3 in this case seems much more useful than king d3. And well, okay, king d3, of course, you are going to keep the pawn, but bishop c3 has also the purpose of keeping your king in the center. And before there was this other move, I believe, where you bishop d2, I think, where you allow me to get the knight into the center. Yeah, it must be. I don't know what your plan is, but I failed to see one. So maybe there is a plan, which would be, of course, a good case. But for me, it's a very passive move, which gives blacks a lot of counterplay. Now I should be able to get to the second game that you sent me, which is from the German competition. This one, and then wait, yeah, this one. So I think it's a very instructive and very yeah, very instructive game. Very well played game as well too, because I think you really deserve to win this. So about the London, I think it's important. So if I look at the game that you got, and if I look a little bit at theory and stuff like this, I see that there are two main possibilities that Black has. One of them is to go for complications, but this involves active play at some point. The second thing is going for simplification, so that you will avoid that your opponent will have a strong hold on the center with many pieces, which can get to your king. You didn't get into trouble in this game early on or the opening; it was all fine. But I think it's still worthwhile to point out a few things. So personally, I prefer the King's Indian stuff because it complicates more. I think also that the simplifying line with Bishop d6 would also have served you. But okay, let's have a look. So d5. This is all okay. So you prepared it, which is also fine. I guess it's all theory. There are not too many games with this. Wait, let me check. Well, bishop f5 apparently is a lot played. Near queen b3. So this is all okay, I think. a3, e6. bishop e2. Now, I included a game by a very strong player at this point. And what he's doing, we don't need to check many moves. I also didn't check them, but you can see that he's very quick in simplifying. So he's just exchanging one piece. What is the point of this? The point is that white's kingside attack is no longer there. So he cannot really go knight g5 anymore because he will lose control over e5. He can keep control of e5, but there's not too much ammunition for the kingside attack. So I think this is very interesting to see, is that you can simplify. Next, I also think at this point, so he castled. These players, they played h3. At this point, the computer suggests g5, which is also interesting, I think, because now you are going for complications. And then, of course, you need many pieces, so you have many pieces. Your king is safe here. It's a bit unorthodox, but the center is very safe. And because the white's king castled, you have some plans to go on the king side. So it's interesting to take the complications yourself. And what you did in the game, it's very sound, I think, mostly. And you end up with simplifying with knight e4. So I won't say it's bad at all, but it's interesting, I think, to consider these other options as well. Now he played rook h3 first, then castling rook d1. Now this is as far as I can see, very strange move because I can imagine that he wants control over e5, and for this reason I can imagine that he wants to have the rook on e1. Possibly one day he might take with the d pawn, and then possibly the other rook might be of use on d1. This seems very strange to me. I cannot imagine that he was planning bishop d3 and exchange and get with this rook to g3. It would be a bit deep play and also not very convincing, but maybe. Now, you played a5 and a4. Check very quickly with the computer before I say any nonsense. So you can see this, the idea of simplification is still common. Now, the thing is, he has weakened his queen side. That's obvious. This setup, there are holes on the white squares, so that's obvious. He wants to advance his pawns, but it's very difficult to do because if he plays b4, you will have problems with c4 and the c file. And black wants to make use of it by going knight a5 and b3 or c4 or something. All of this is okay. Now a5, a4, I struggle a little bit with what exactly the benefit of this move is, of these moves are. I mean, it costs 2 tempi, and white uses these tempi to get the kingside attack going on. And I don't see what's the added value if the pawn is on a4. I mean, he can, of course, not play b4 anymore at all, though he played it in the game. But apart from that, it seems that b4 is not such a great move for black anyway. So if you want to play on the queen side, makes more sense, in my opinion, to do something like knight a5. But I think you won't get very far because you can go to b3, it gets exchanged, and then it will be kind of a standstill. And therefore, this knight e4 move is interesting, again, because it's simplification. And I think it's very important to do this in this position because your king is a little bit in danger, after all, because there are many pieces on the king side. You see that this attack is possible, at least. So I really think that it's very important to see this. I must confess that I myself, I would also play neutral moves like rook d8 or something useless, but generally wishable, let's say. But I think that the simplification idea is something to remember to get rid of this kingside attack. Okay, now the pawn is moved. He is moving his pieces to the king side, of course. And now, okay, yeah, this the sacrifice, it looks dangerous, of course, and it's very easy to get overwhelmed by analyzing it, because you can imagine knight g5 and then knight h5 and you're getting baited. So I can easily see it. The thing is, if you see something like this, rather than start analyzing, the question is, how can I approach with my pieces to the king? How can I help my king? And okay, you cannot really move with this knight. You cannot move with the king. I think it's too slow. But I think that the white squares is a possible solution like this. This is something to keep in mind. Your queen is really far away from the king side, so it's pivotal to bring this piece to the king side, because then it will be all over. Computer will show you as well, I think, queen b2, and it can be interesting to check the lines to see how it goes. I mean, this is the ideal thing, of course, but white will prevent it with rook c1. It can be a good exercise to calculate it yourself. So queen b2, rook c1, how will I progress? How will I try to hold this attack? So okay, this I think this is very interesting to check it on yourself and analyze if you can hold it or not, and then check it with the computer. What are you missing or what not? Bishop d3 should not be dangerous at all, because he is exchanging one of his best pieces. It costs time. And yeah, okay, I don't see. Well, your reaction is very strong now. Let me tell it like this: you neutralize his piece, his attacking pieces, and then it's very safe for you. Knight a5 you mentioned. This is, I think, a case where you can put a knight on b3, which is in theory a great square, but in practice it's doing nothing. And the text, the rook will move away, and then the knight is just standing there. You are not able to do anything else on the queen side, and all of your pieces are away on the king side. So it's very good that you're playing in the center and or on the king side. Now this one, and this knight, this bishop f g5 move is very, very, very strong indeed. It's a motive that's known in the Nassdorf and in the Ruy Lopez, where you often have this bishop which tries to come out. So if you know this, it might help indeed. Yeah, okay, whatever. So it's good to remember it for the following occasion, though it won't have happened that much, I think. Now f6 is certainly not a bad move, and I think that black is, well, computer also says that black is certainly better at this point, because you can see that this attack is all over, pieces are gone, and you are now having a kind of a combination of the plans that I mentioned in the opening, this knight e4 move, this g5 move, which very nicely comes on the board. Now, I would be very, very happy with such a position with black intuitively, because I see that I have a pawn mass which is very mobile, and my king is safe. White has two little pieces. He must sacrifice, I think, two pieces to get to the king, because if he sacrifices the bishop on g5, it's not enough. So yeah, it's very safe. I think it's important to be able to gain time with such things while playing, because probably you didn't feel very safe or didn't feel very safe at the moment, and that might have cost you a lot of time, which is not necessary here, because white has no options to sacrifice, so you can play it right away, I think. I think this is also not the best move, but the computer will tell you, because you are, of course, creating a double attack and putting yourself under a lot of pressure. Now this one, you're right, it takes a lot of time. I think it's experience that would tell me to move to find a solution very quickly. King h7 and rook f7 are both the moves that are coming into consideration. King f7 I would never look at, I think, because the king is not better in the center, as you noticed a bit later in the game. On the edge of the board on h7, there's nothing which can harm the king. I mean, you can see three pieces, but none of these pieces can harm it. The only thing I can imagine is that there will be a check on e4, that the long diagonal will be open. So you must check this b1 h7 diagonal, but you can check it. You can defend it with queen c6 if necessary, with f5 as well, which is all very strategically very okay for black. So because of this, I would play king h7. Rook f7 can also serve. Problem with rook f7 is that it's a bit slower because you leave the pin. So it's not that the piece on f4 is hanging, but if you play king h7, the piece is hanging. And okay, he must do something he doesn't want to do. Bishop d2, f5, and you're going on, I think. Well, f5, you must check, of course, the sacrifice, but it would should be fine because you can run away with the king, I think, with rook f7, king h5, tuck, tuck, and you should be away. So yeah, in any case, king h7 is a very fine move. If bishop d2, you also have other moves, of course. You can do bishop d6 maybe, or queen c6. There are many other moves, or queen b5. You don't need to go f5 at once. King f7 is making it risky for your whole king. So I fail to understand a bit why you did it. Well, I understand that you were afraid of having the king on the edge and cut off from the other pieces, but a simple check of counting the defense of the g pawn would have done the trick. Also because you can reinforce the defense easily with the queen, and rook g8 can also contribute to the defense. King in the center is a bigger problem. So yeah, I know that you are not afraid of complications. Maybe king f7 is also played in that spirit of going for complications. But king h7, yeah, it's just fine. Just fine. Bishop d2. And bishop d6, rook e3, f5. So now you are going on the king side as well. King d1. Now again, I fail to see why you are going to the center. Okay, a4 is hanging. That's clear. Yeah, it's a bit complicated because it's on two edges of the board. Computer will tell you that queen b2 is perfectly safe, and this is a line, I think, or a situation where you can, how to say, where you have to trust your evaluations and your calculations. So if you have queen b2, rook b1, queen a3, rook b7, suppose, or queen h5, king g7, rook b7, rook c7 in between, it's finished. His attack is finished. Why? Because this rook on b7 is neutralized, is fully neutralized. And the rook on e3 and the bishop on d2 are not playing at all in the attack. So the queen is completely on itself. There are pawns behind it. You have rook f6 as a defense. And you have the advance of the a pawn to win on the queen side on yourself. So it's a matter of having trust in your own calculation, I think. This queen b2, but it should be checked. It's a very forceful move, queen b2, and it's do or die. I mean, if white is not able to do anything like rook b1, rook b7, or queen h5, or queen a4, then he's completely lost. So he must act, and then you must calculate and check and also believe in it. I still think that this pawn mass on the king side is something that should really give comfort for black. King e7, I'm not saying it's a blunder or something, but okay, it's not incisive. You give him some time, and you're not breaking through. You can see he defends now, and it's kind of a standstill now again. But still, very, very much better for black, of course, because of this pawn mass on the king side, which should be winning. Now rook c1, he plays very, very strange move in my opinion. Now you wanted to double hooks. This is also something I don't understand. I don't see anything against pushing. Lines are a bit more complicated than one would say at first sight, maybe. I checked a little bit with the computer and so on, but I believe rook e2 seemed a logical move. No, well, rook e1 seems most logical move. But after rook e2, I would say f3 at once, instantly. But maybe this gives some time, and the computer suggests g4 first, and now f3. And with the idea that there is some kind of a split in white's position, that this pawn is really isolated now, and this should be winning because this pawn on f3 cannot be tolerated in the long run. But again, this is computer material, so we will undoubtedly calculate it into a win. For a human, I think that this f3 move is a very strong idea. You can still wait with it, maybe. You can maybe do something like b5 to stop him, or and later on still maybe double hooks. Though again, against it speaks this one, so I think you can crash. I really think you can crash. It's very difficult for a human to stop it. This one is very slow. I don't see the benefit of doubling hooks here. I mean, it's also not really the case that the fi will get open. He will try to avoid it, and it's more that you will try to get to the king than to get the fi open. And doubling hooks, in my opinion, is only useful if you have the fi open by force, and I don't think this is always the case. Now b4, and this is indeed where you have made a mistake. I think you fully underestimated that these pawns are now a front together, which is interesting because the thing I wanted to speak about, but I will do it in the next video, was about these pawn structures, pawn masses, and here you have a pawn mass that is getting created against which you are not doing anything. You can take, you can play b5, whatever. The idea is that you have to deal with it. By allowing it to advance, he will overrun you. On the queen side, it's a problem. In the center, it's a problem. And your king is also in the center. So this is very much an issue. So here we have, with the pawns, you can see that there is a hiccup in the play. So you underestimate your own attack because you also have pawns going on, and your pawns are quicker than his. While you don't do anything or you don't deal with his plans. Rook f8. So you are piling up, but there is no initiative, and then it's kind of a standstill. He is going now. King d8. So yeah. I fail also a bit to understand this move, but okay, you missed the momentum probably already. But I fail to understand it a bit because you don't do anything, and of course you can see he is doing a lot. He's completely overrunning you, and here it's a piece up, so this is completely finished, of course. So it's very interesting. You played very well. I think from the opening, the idea of simplifying as well as this g5 idea is interesting to see. In both cases, you can see that simplification really brought you a lot in this game. I think this is also the point of this opening system that I proposed, where you very quickly are going to play bishop d6 and play for e5, because you completely avoid any kingside attack. And this kingside attack, or this idea of this kingside attack, kind of hampered your play a little bit, because you at certain points you were afraid of it, which I understand. The bishop h6 move is a very threatening and dangerous looking idea. While at the point that you had the pawn mass, you were also underestimating yourself a little bit in this perspective. So I hope it's a bit interesting for you to have some of these observations. There are some questions, let's say, where you can ask yourself what you are thinking in the game compared to what I'm saying now. But if any questions arise, you should just let me know, of course. Bye.